Happy hurricane party, everybody. Oh, wait, that's over. Sorry. I can joke about that because I went through the middle of it one just recently. And I got to say, Beryl, your landscaping job sucks. I am John Nelson, the plugin CEO of JKL Works and pluginbusiness.com and several other projects that are happening. And we are survivors of hurricane. That's why we were gone. Took a little bit of a break by force because we had no power. And I joke about that because it beats the alternative. There's lots of issues surrounding storm preparedness and companies' roles in it and all sorts of that stuff. And that's not my problem to sort out at the moment. We were without power for 5 days, and now we have it back. This is near Houston, Texas. So that prompted what we're going to talk about today, because that and some conversations. I'll get into that. But that's what I want to talk about is the 4 R's of disaster recovery. So hopefully that will help. At least a little bit, at least for you to think about some of these things before they happen to you guys. This is not the first time it has come around here, and we all forget. So let's dive into it and see what's going on. So who am I? Well, I am a managing partner for the last 20 plus years of several small businesses, and we've had to manage through different things like this, and it was not fun. For some previous ones because survivor of at least 4 hurricanes that came through here. This is the latest. And then countless aftermaths of storms or tropical storms or winter storms or just big rain events that caused all kinds of trouble around here. And so it really does facilitate a plan. That's adds to my long list of things that I wish that I had plans that I had made before but didn't. So this is a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I really hope it does help because then in talking to some of my clients that are out there right now that are dealing with this, that are in various aspects, it is it's tough. It's tough for them. Particularly some of you home services folks that are having to really, you wouldn't think they would do anything, but because unless they're an electric provider or something, but otherwise there's a lot of things that have to happen. Propane folks know what I'm talking about. Plumbers know what I'm talking about. I mean, there's just different things that have to happen for it to come in there. Folks that I know that are general contractors are actually gearing their business a little bit to do some storm removal and do some other things and build some goodwill. And it's awesome on them. And I hope, afterwards that they get the benefit of people's patronage when it's time for something that's elective that they would like done and that they're willing to, they remember who took care of them when the time was good. So that's important. And that's important in kind of in coming up with some of this. So like I said, I hope this helps you, and I hope this helps you think at least a little bit anyway, or start something in your mind of, okay, and even if you don't live on the coast and have to deal with hurricanes, well, you may live inland and you may have to deal with a winter storm. Those can be just as nasty. Or these derecho things that they're having, these big windstorm events that are happening now, or any number of flooding rains, or any number of things that could be an issue. Fires, wildfires. So what does your disaster preparedness look like for whatever business that you have, and how can you turn it to something that helps people in their time of need, and does the right thing. And then afterwards, ensure that these people help, try to remember, and they come back and they find you. And it turns out to be, major amounts of business that could help you because you helped somebody whenever they needed it. And so then they're ready to return the favor. So that's what this is about. So what are the 4 R's that we talk about here? And the first one is remote, and this is about working remotely. Do you have the capability? Do you have the necessity to work remotely? And if so, what does that look like? Respond. How do you respond to customers during this time? How do you manage customers through this? How do you manage everybody? How do you manage your teams through this? Of employees and people that you have to keep going. How does that work for you? Reactivate. How do you reactivate? Not only once the storm is done, but perhaps reactivate some long lost opportunities you didn't think you would get again. And finally, review. Have you reviewed all of these things, and have you come up with a strategy and a plan to make this happen? Should this happen again? Do this now before you forget. Polish it, bring it out every once in a while, dust it off, and polish off that, polish up that list. Not polish it off, that's getting rid of it. Polish up the list, and make sure that it's good to go. And then we'll have a few other guides. So let's talk about remote. Let's talk about what things look like from a remote standpoint. So the first question you see there is, do you need to work remotely? Is there a need in your business to stay going during the event, the storm, the whatever it is? If you are, in the healthcare, if you're a digital marketer, probably not. If you're in the healthcare, services group, I guess that depends. My chiropractor used to say that I, learned a whole lot from about marketing, even before I knew that's what it was. He was the first to say, you know what, if you have an emergency, go to the emergency room. If you need a doctor's care right then because there's an injury or there's something that's happened, go get it taken care of. Don't screw around. Well, my chiropractor said not to go to the hospital. No, don't be an idiot. Go get that taken care of if it's an emergency. But if it's something that's a little more preventative or you can take a little more time, that's when some of the health and wellness folks can really do what they do very well. But there may be some people who have really committed to, say, the holistic practices and some different stuff. And so they still may have needs, and you still have to work through that. So they may have a need to be open. The trades and home services kind of goes without saying. You guys need to be on alert. It's certainly, electricians, plumbers, propane folks, any other types of needs like that. Maybe even if you have some mechanic skills, there may be generators that need to be worked on or vehicles that need to be worked on. That's a big deal. So do you need to be open is always the first question that you need to ask. Do you need to be able to work? Then let's talk about, assuming that you do for a second, what's your ability to work going to look like? What is your ability to serve your customers going to look like? How is that going to work? How can you communicate with them? How can you get your employees, your teams, yourself out to do different things and serve the customers that clearly need what you have in order to stay open? What are you going to do when the power goes out? And it probably will. What are you going to do potentially in some cases when water goes out and you don't have that available to you? Then what's going to happen? That's a big deal. And then finally, sort of to that point, is the ability to not only, accept payment for things, but procure products and services that you need to keep your business open. If you can't get supplies, it doesn't matter if you're open or not. There's not much you can do. We saw some of that during the pandemic. People couldn't get supplies. Restaurants were finding very creative ways to stay open and serve people. A whole cottage industry of remote drive-up stuff or being service through the window, and they were surviving. It wasn't great, but it was better than nothing at all. And they could at least kind of function, but they still had supplies they had to deal with. And supply shortages they had to deal with. Restaurants now, my wife works for a food services company, and they had to throw out a tremendous amount of food because they were without power for a couple of days. And though they have freezers and generators and things, during the actual storm, it's still problematic. And so they have to reorder everything. So can you get that? Can you get that there? Can you get the stuff done that you need? That's the whole idea of working remotely. No matter where you are, do you need to be working? And if so, where is that? Is that here in the storm, or if you have to, or here's another thought, and this one does hit home for digital marketers. If you're out of power, like we were, how do you service your people in the rest of the country? What does that look like? That's part of what is involved in remote work. So all these things need to be thought through, whether you're working remotely or you are disconnected from the rest of your customers because you don't have that ability to work remotely, or you can't go around it, or you can't travel for whatever reason, or the facilities aren't there, or whatever. Thinking remotely is something you're going to have to think about here. And as far as when you're going through so what we're doing, we're very slowly but surely building a battle plan for this. And so remote is the first thing that we start with. Now, let's talk about responding to customers. How do you deal with customer communication during this time? Whether you stay open or whether you don't, that's fine. But how are you going to deal with customer communication? How are you going to deal with team communication and company communication and getting that word out to different people? What are how are you going to be able to conduct business at all? I mean, if somebody comes up with a major thing and you got to try to get out there. So are you going to be able to do that? How do you prioritize those needs? How do you determine, and it's sort of when these things happen, you kind of get into a triage situation. And you have to figure that out. How do you do that? How do you work with folks that how do you determine which is the greatest need? One of my customers was talking about that, and he is literally all out until he gets like 6 hours of sleep a night, and right now, and he is otherwise out doing major service in all different areas, and struggling to keep up with it because doesn't have enough people, which kind of speaks to the third point. What are you going to do if you need help? If you're so overwhelmed, you can't do anything, you can't function, you can't do the stuff you need to do. How are you going to be able to make that happen? So that speaks to prioritize. How do you bring in contractors? How do you set up to help to provide people? Some have had to bring people in from the outside. And so how does that work? Is that is that set up in advance where, hey, if you need help, I'm going to come help you, or I'll bring my truck over and do work on your behalf, and we'll sort out the billing later as to how that's going to work. How does that happen? Have you planned for that? When it does happen, these are some of the key elements that people don't think about until it's right there in the trenches of it. And you really have to make snap decisions of stuff you should have thought about already. But responding to customers is just one of those things that you're going to have to deal with, even though I pretty much guarantee you didn't think about it. Let's talk about reactivation, as you got the preview there for a second. So this is after the storm, primarily, or whatever it is that came through after the disaster, after the event. So there is obviously reactivating operations. What is involved there? Can you do it safely? Do you have to dispose of anything that might have been affected? Did you get a tree through your building, as many of us did? Actually, we didn't. But we did have one that crossed our driveway and had to be cut up and removed. But several people I know had trees come into their house. And so they will have to deal with that. This was more of a windstorm than any of us thought. And so it was just a mess. So what does restoring operations and reactivating operations look like? To the point of a minute ago, we were talking about communications. How about reactivating your customers? These are existing customers you have. How do you get the word out? Hey, we're going again. If you have needs, let's get those taken care of for you. How do you let them know what's going on? and whether or not they can get what it is that they need from you, that they normally buy from you. How do you let them know? And then there's the third aspect. I mean, these two you really think about, but there's the third aspect of, let's just say that you have old customers that kind of went away, or you have prospects of people that didn't pan out, and all of a sudden you are the only one in the area who can provide what they need, what you're originally trying to get with them about in the first place. And they do need it. So how do you work that out? Well, that is an opportunity. And that is an opportunity that you should address beforehand as to how you're going to handle that. They may or may not have the ability to pay you because the electricity is down, and so they can't, or the phone service is down. It's happened to us a little, just briefly during the storm itself. We couldn't hardly text anybody. I had a friend who told me, we were joking back and forth that it was like the 1990s, where you couldn't do anything else except call and except really text people. But that's what happens in these storms. And actually, Hurricane Katrina is the one that first taught us that people were able to text, and people were there were different ways of doing communication, but they were not data driven as many of the apps are now. So how are you going to accept payment for that? Are you going to accept payment for that? Or are you going to work it out later? Or do you figure out a way to have an opportunity to circle back to these folks and say, okay, so now we're able to prove that for you during the storm, and after the storm, we provided what you needed. How about a second look at what we do? How about a chance to, would you consider giving us a shot now that we've proven what we can do, and bring it to you? And would you consider becoming a customer and telling others then what was done for you? These are opportunities, and there's probably there should not be a little bit of shame in talking to them about this, but I suspect for a lot of business owners there is you don't want to bring that up, even though you truly did them a service, you did them a positive thing, you provided something when nobody else could or would. And you would hope they'd be grateful for that. But sometimes there's a stigma about asking about that. So how are you going to overcome that? How are you going to set it up in such a way where that you don't have that stigma, where everybody can feel comfortable about it and say, you know what, you did a good thing for me. You provided something for me, Mr. or Miss Business Owner. So I'm going to remember that, and I'm going to do right by it. I'm going to come buy from you, and I'm going to tell other people that I know to come buy from you to help get you on your feet and to help keep things going. That's the way it should work, but not everybody feels comfortable handling that. So as best you can, try to set that up in advance, where if anybody does come back in those circumstances, you can have something to give them, maybe that says, okay, so we'll take care of your issue now, but when the power comes back on and everything gets back to normal, remember this is who we are, and this is what we did. And, please come back and support a local business and do for us what was done for you, because it means a lot to us as well. And there should be no shame in that whatsoever, in asking that and and providing that opportunity for them. So, but it's just not something everybody necessarily thinks about. You're just trying to get through the day, and you're trying to get all the problems taken care of. That's why all of this is so important up front in thinking about this. Okay. So let's get to the final thing, and that is review. This is, so you've been through the others. You've determined whether or not you can or should work remotely. You have determined how you're going to respond and interact with your customers, your employees, and your contractors, if you bring in any outside people, and how that's going to work. And then you've determined how to get things started again once the storm is over and once everything gets back to normal. So what does this look like for review? It's time to actually put together this plan, right? So we're going to actually have a plan here in just a minute. But I guess the thing is, do you need to open? Do you need to do this? Do you need to be there? That's the first thing that you put on, is the foundation for this. Do you need to be there? Have you created a plan you can follow? And let's see. And have you created a plan that you can follow? Are you willing to sit down and do that once everything is calmed down? Now, the third thing is, how do you manage your customers through this? How do you accept payments? How do you get the services or products that you need to provide the services and products that you provide during that time? So think about these things as you're putting this plan together and what this can look like. So what would a plan like this kind of, so you've taken some time just to jot this down on paper. This doesn't have to be a big formal document written in legalese and triplicate. It just got to be something that you can follow. It's like diet plans. The most successful diet plan is the one that you follow, right? So, okay, this is the same thing. The most successful disaster recovery plan is the one that you plan out and then actually follow and practice following, even though, you can do fake versions of it just to make sure that everything works properly, or, right before when you think something is coming, then try to see how you would manage through that. But if you don't have it in place, you can't do that. Now the storm is coming. That is not the time to develop this and try to put it in place. Do yourself the favor that nobody thinks about until it's too late almost. And then what to do is put this in place well ahead of time. When you're calmed down and the adrenaline's not rushing, and you have some ability to think about this, and then test it periodically. So put that together. So what does this look like? All right. So on your plan, it should be what is needed to restore business, to work through business operations. How is that going to function? This could just be to-do lists. This could be an outline on a Word document or something handwritten. But have the different process steps in place. This speaks very much to something we'll go through later about, and we've talked about already, about policies and procedures and developing those in your business. This is why it's oftentimes tied to HR and safety and other things, because disaster preparedness is chief among them. Okay, so also in your plan, determine how you're going to deal with customers. How are you going to walk them through this? How are you going to stay connected to them through and after this as best you can? How are you going to let them know that if something crazy happens that you didn't plan for, you got your plan in place, but craziness still happens, which it certainly can. How do you connect with them? And what's the avenue that you're going to, what's a place that you're going to always post things as best you can, as soon as you can, whether that's, social media, a certain place on social media, maybe a Facebook page, or it's something, or it's a sign in the window, that you handwrite and put up there. How is that going to happen? How can you prepare them for that? And then, as we said, finally, how do we deal with the transactions of business during these storms? This is the one out of all three of these. This is the one people don't think about until it's I won't say it's too late, but it's very difficult to deal with. How are you going to get the supplies that you need to make what you make and sell what you sell? And how are you going to get payment for these? And what are you going to do if people that your customers don't have the capacity to pay at that point? But how do you ensure that they come up with the money later, and that it's revisited upon them to help you out when you need it, when everything has settled down, and everything has settled down for them too. So you can do the right thing at the time and help these people, but not get screwed in the process. Okay. Because sadly, in this world, there are people that will do that, and there's just enough of them to make up for the many who don't, that it almost makes it even. But that is something you're really going to have to think about. This is very vague. This is very top level. I get it. But everybody's disaster plan is going to look a little different. Don't push this off to something HR is supposed to handle. Don't push this off to something that is, for somebody else, or hey, that's a freebie we got from whatever company does our payroll. Don't push this off to somebody else. I don't have time to think about that stuff. I'm over here serving customers. Well, neither did my clients, who are right in the middle of it and knew it was coming, and yet still are overwhelmed by what's happening. So that's something we're going to work through once it calms down, as to how. I mean, some of it they have in place, some of it they don't, and still craziness can happen that the best amount of planning won't overcome, because things still can be issues. So I hope this helps you at least, spur something in your mind as to what a disaster plan can look like and how you can recover from it and what you can gain out of doing that. If not, or if you struggle with this, again, this is one of the things that we cover, doing what we do. So this all starts with, because we're business after all too, is not the strategy session. Let's go over here to the success blueprints. This is what we try to get you to if we're going from left to right. Okay, so the success blueprint, or the digital success blueprint, is our free look at finding you at least $50,000 in 50 minutes, but also in profits, by the way. But also, we take a look at things like this. Policies and procedures, is disaster recovery is one of the things that we will eventually talk about. And what can come, the peace of mind that can come with having some of this in place. It's not all disaster recovery. Maybe it's putting policies and procedures in place for if an employee leaves or goes on maternity leave, or is away for some extended time, or is fired, or is whatever. Don't just leave this to some HR entity. This is your business. Own it and be a part of that process. Don't just push it off for somebody to boilerplate. Make sure it fits your business. Make sure every policy and procedure, especially the disaster recovery, fits your business. Okay, if nothing else. So we do, but we look at that during the success blueprints. And if you want some help with that, that's why we're here. We get you to the implementation. We get you to the to where this all can be sorted out in one of a couple of different ways. So yes, we do the success blueprint for online and also for a local business. The success blueprint is especially important now for some of these folks that are local businesses after storms. We'll be looking at some of this stuff. The online, not so much. It's different sets of problems. It's how do you service people that are far flung when your business is not operational, or not as operational as you would like it to be. So it's a whole different set of problems. But then, yes, we do get to the implementations, and whether that's week by week, step by step, working through this, spending an hour a week together, or it's unlimited 15-minute sessions, just little bite-sized pieces at a time. How can we help you deal with this? So these are the things that we cover. These are the things that we talk about. This is what we say all the time. This is more than just about getting customers. Getting customers is a huge part of what you need. Make no mistake. I don't want to minimize that at all. But it's also about the back end stuff that not every marketer tells you. Because not everybody focuses on it. You're busy getting customers and doing what you do, but what happens when the power goes out? What happens when a tree falls through your business and you're unable to work there for any number of reasons? Or, there's a bad snowstorm and you can't even get to the office, and you never set up the ability to work remotely. Or, something catastrophic happens to one of your, God forbid, something happens to one of your employees or your team members, and you have to figure out how to compensate for that. So these are the back office things that we don't talk about enough. So that's one of the reasons that we're business and marketing optimization coaches. This is what we do all day long. And if this is something that would benefit you to have these discussions and a whole lot more, also the cool ones about getting customers, then let's book a success blueprint down here below, blueprint.jkoworks.com, and let's see what that can look like for you. Okay, it's worth your time to pre-plan. It really truly is. If not, then you're kind of missing out on something that's just not going to work for you like you think it's going to. All right, so I hope that's helpful for you. Learning from what we just came through. Got to spend a week then without electricity, but that was out spent removing trees and removing tree limbs and cutting things up with chainsaws and burning things and getting everything out of the way so that we can try to resume a normal life, because all of these, this was not a powerful hurricane as they go, but it's and it's not the most powerful one to hit here probably, but it was a windstorm. And so in that, it did a tremendous amount of damage to infrastructure that still has not recovered for everybody. Has for most, but over a week later, now it still has not recovered for everybody. So don't think it can happen to you. So be prepared in advance to make this happen, or seek some help from us or others like us to make that happen. I'm over here with my hand up. Pick me. But thanks for watching. And I will leave you with this, during the why does this discussion about the 4 R's of disaster recovery. So how do you save a dying pirate? CPR. Bye.